Hey guys, Jerry Beerman with Conduit, and today our podcast guest is a good friend of mine, Don Kennedy. Don Kennedy is the owner, operator of ProMaster Home Repair. So as we do a shift into the into the growth stage that I'm lovingly calling it the stage of hell.
Yeah,
So as you think of
it
the
is.
growth stage, you started in the growth stage, right?
Yeah.
Even as a solopreneur, you you were already thinking from a business development standpoint. But for the listeners that get into the growth stage, and I appreciate again, you helped me unpack some of the parameters, some of the
Right.
characteristics of the growth stage. But to tee it up for you, the growth stage would be, when you hire your first or your second employee. Tell the listeners, tell the solopreneurs what they can expect, and for the listeners that happen to be in the growth stage, give them some insight on how to get the hell out of there as quickly as possible.
Well, as a little background, you know this about me, Jerry, but I'm an ex-Air Force pilot. And one of the things you learn as an instructor in an aircraft, we always had a rule, and that is this: if you can be misunderstood, you will be.
Beautiful.
So as you become a boss, okay, now you've got this company that you founded, that you started, that you care deeply about. And now you're going to bring people in as you start taking hats off and you start assigning duties to them. You need to remember that you will be misunderstood with everything that you say. Okay. So most of it will be misunderstanding. Some of it will be defiance and laziness and all sorts of stuff that comes with the human experience in leading and managing and trade people. But you have to understand, just because you've been doing something a certain way for so long, it's intuitive, it is natural for you. It is not for that other person.
Yeah.
So even if all you have is it up here in your cranium, it better be clear, and it better be a repeatable process, and it better be expectations that can be clearly communicated. So when that person comes in, they can go, I got it, Jerry. I got it. I can do that. I watch a lot of people make that mistake, and I still do myself.
Yeah. What do you see as like some of the characteristics from so that solopreneur, let's call him Smedley.
Mhm.
So Smedley um, has the development hat on, and Smedley's like, I'm excited to
Yeah.
get, I want to build a legacy business, Don. And so he's a solopreneur. You've been coaching him, and he says, somehow you end up in the conversation to Smedley. Hey, Smedley, start thinking about your first couple hires. What do you, where is Smedley looking for those people, and how would you coach him differently?
Yeah, so great question. So let's back up one step. That's kind of a transition between the two steps, because you talk about this all the time. You talk about the importance of cash flow.
Oh God.
So this is kind of a bridge between those two stages. And you bring up Don Patton. That guy was a monster at job costing.
Yeah.
That guy knew where every job was, whether each job was profitable or not. And what I find with most solopreneurs is they don't have a strong financial accounting system. And I get it. I hate accounting. I hate doing it, right? But I had a father-in-law, like you did, who was an accountant who taught me job costing at a very young age. And he drilled it through my head. He said, Don, the number one reason that I see small businesses go out of businesses is cash flow problems. And in our industry, the only way you're going to have positive cash flow is to make sure your jobs are profitable. And the mistake that I hear so many guys say is like, well, you win some, you lose some. Nope, I guarantee with that mindset, you'll lose more than you win. You have to make sure that you're structuring each job, labor, materials, all of your overhead costs, your fixed, your semi-variable costs, all those things. You don't have to be an expert at it. You don't need to do your own taxes, but you need to understand what a P&L and balance sheet is, and you need to know at least what these things mean and how your daily actions of how you're buying material and how it's getting assigned to a job and how much labor is going in the job and what's your time worth and what's your subs times worth and how all that gets put into a job. How do you structure that to make that profitable? There's a lot of ways to get there, and that's not what is important here. Is that you ought to know. And if you're going to do a job that isn't profitable, whether it's a small job as a loss leader to maybe gain a client, you know why, and you know how much you're losing as a result of doing that. You have no business moving from that solopreneur phase to the growth phase until you at least get control of that. Because if at the end of the day, all a business is a cash engine. Well, if the parts of the engine aren't even functioning, or you don't even have a dashboard to understand, hey, what's my water temperature? Man, do I have good oil pressure? What's the RPM, right? You're going to blow the engine up real fast. And if you talk to accountants, I think they'll tell you that's usually what they see happen. It isn't because that dude couldn't or dudette couldn't get business. It isn't because they weren't good at what they were doing or didn't do good work. They could not manage the cash flow. So as soon as it scaled, they had no idea if they were making money or how or where it was coming from or what was going in the business or going out of it.
That's great. So we can't forbid you, we can't make you, like, you're as a solopreneur, I'm not your boss. I don't have any control over you, but if you heard what Don just said, solopreneur, we're talking to you right now, is like, if we could forbid you to move to the growth stage before you had job costing nailed down and a financial infrastructure, we
Yeah.
would. Like, Don's nodding his head right now. It's like,
Yeah.
you are not permitted, it's like the Monopoly game, right? You can't pass go. You cannot pass go. You are setting yourself up for, which we've seen, which we won't talk by name, but we've seen financial devastation created because people didn't adhere to that advice.
So the first person you hire, getting back to your question, has to be the accountant or financial advisor. Maybe you don't need a bookkeeper. Okay, maybe you do, maybe you don't. But it's ensuring that that person has helped you put that basic, it can just be basic infrastructure and understanding. So you have enough financial literacy as you start moving forward, you stand the greatest chance of actually making money, because making money is what's going to fuel your next hire and your next acquisition of equipment or whatever you need to grow the business.
And just to speak to that for the Conduit members, or if people are listening to this and they're not yet members, reach out to me, reach out to Don. We've got access to
Yeah.
professionals. What Don was just talking about, I'm not going to name them by name right now, but within our professional services, we have access to people, professionals that have a high level of financial acumen that can actually help you build your QuickBooks infrastructure from the jump, for instance. So people that you can afford. And if you said, I can't afford them, then again, Don and I would coach you to say, then by God, don't move to the growth
Move.
stage. Build
Don't.
cash. One of the things that I learned on a podcast recently, I talked to you about it on the Voxer this morning, Don, is that for the solopreneurs that are young, right, that are in their 20s or 30s or 40s, like, you're 40, yes, you're freaking young, right? So your most productive decade is arguably in your 60s, which I'm going to be 58, like I said, in a couple of months. So patience,
Yeah.
patience is so important here. So
Mhm.
I digress. But as Don hit on that, it's like, a lot of times when you're listening to people like us, you're like, I don't have access to the resources. Well, I'm going to suffocate that bullshit from you right now, listeners. You do
Yeah.
now, because I just told
Yeah.
you that Don and I have access. Like, I might not have that skill set, but I have access to people that can help you. And we do have people that can help you. And again, Don and I, speaking for us, like, if somebody just wants to vent, and I do this with Don frequently,
Mhm.
like, I'll vent. But other times it's like, you know what? I need to stop venting and I need to
Yeah.
actually do something to build an infrastructure to get me to the next level.